Hello and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and this afternoon be uh, delivering a rare occurrence, which is a second podcast in the same day. Not unheard of for the show, but um, not the normal. But it is kind of podcast season because the regular year is just busy. I'm a school teacher by trade and also a coach, so I do the one, then the other, and that didn't leave a lot of time, to get the podcast done. But sometimes I'll squeeze one in the morning, sometimes one in the evening. But in the summer, there's a lot more hours available. So we're getting a rare double today. I had Lexi Keller on this morning, the heptathlete originally from Colorado State, who's now number 6 ranked heptathlete in the U.S. and is climbing the charts. I think earlier this year she was as high as 70th, she said, in the world. To get to the world's itself, she has to be in the top 25, and I think she's up around 40. And then this last competition she went to in Spain, she actually started climbing up that ladder even farther and is kind of getting up into the 20s. So great news there. Really nice, fun podcast. Lexi is very sharp. She works with a podcast, not a podcast, with a video analysis platform called Onform, and we got into a lot of talking about training and what it's like being out of college and continuing to push the envelope there and getting her ready for the Olympics. So in 2028 here in LA. So tune in to that. As usual, please subscribe. Always shamelessly self-promoting and pimping. Please, go to YouTube and hit the subscribe button there. We also are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you'll see the video version on YouTube, and then the other two are just, if you drive around in your car a lot and you like listening to podcasts, as that's how I usually listen. And so, do that. And then this afternoon, we've got a special treat. I have my former coach, Allan Hanckel, and Greg Kish, who is the dad of one of the athletes the schools that I work for at Redondo. But he has a very interesting job that we're going to run by you. And we want to talk about how to promote and basically improve the state of, or the standings of track and field here in the US and worldwide, which we'll talk about many things when it comes to that. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with that as soon as I get Alan and Greg in the waiting room, in the green room. So right back here on Raise the Bar with Troy Haynes. All right, so I'm back after a small break of my own. I don't know if you can see this. I'm holding a coffee cup. There it is. How do I get it on screen? Oh, there it is. So I'm pretending I'm David Letterman doing an interview. Got my cup of coffee. I'm gonna ask my questions. So we're ready to go. Just waiting for a couple people to sign on in the old green room. There he is.
What's up,
Greg,
brother?
how you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
All
Hey
right.
guys.
Hey, Alan.
Hey Greg.
All
Good to
right.
meet you.
Troy.
Yes, sir. How
What's
are we?
happening?
Ah, I was just telling Greg, it was a busy morning. I had Lexi Keller on earlier, the heptathlete. She's number 6 in the U.S. So we had talked about her and her latest competitions and whatnot. So I said it's a rare double day, 2 podcasts, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, with some training in the middle. So
You're killing it, boy.
killing it. We're getting after it. A lot of extra hours here in the summer.
All right, good deal. Greg,
All
Greg,
right.
thanks for taking the time out. I'm sure you're up to your eyeballs and stuff to do.
No, it worked out great. I was on like a 5-day road trip, landed last night, had calls from like 6:30 until about 1:30, and this is like perfect timing, wind down, and probably grab a drink after this.
I
Good,
like it.
good. Are you in LA or where are
I
you?
am. I'm in Redondo Beach.
Oh, that's too bad, huh?
Yeah, sucks right now.
Now,
Always a
are
little
you
colder.
is part of the things that I wanted to ask about. Are you from LA originally?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you are.
I can go like background a little bit if you
Yeah,
guys
Yeah,
yeah,
want to
if you
hear
would, that
that.
would be great.
absolutely.
And then if you want to ask any other like back end questions, we can go back. But I can start with my background. So yeah, look, I first of all, I just want to say that privileged to be on with you guys. I think if you look at some of the accomplishments that you all have had on and off the track, it's pretty damn impressive. So thank you for having me a part of this.
Oh
No,
man,
very enjoyable.
Yeah.
awesome
We,
having me.
yeah, we just a real before you get into your
Yeah.
thing. Troy and I have known each other for too long, actually. When we first met, I could actually take him to the well on the golf course, and now he can absolutely spank me like nobody's business. But yeah, we go back a long way and have a great relationship. We since I've started getting back into the whole athletic arena. Um, one of my first calls was to talk to Troy about what he was doing, he was experiencing in terms of where things are developmentally
Yeah.
and that whole thing. That was a number of years ago, and in the process or since then, he's established his presence with Sky High and Fly and Raise the Bar podcast, and he's participating as a contributor to the effort that I started probably in the middle of last year, which is Essentials of Track and Field. And our podcast, which we have not yet launched, but hopefully we're hoping for soon after USA Nationals as possible. So this is a collaborative effort. It's kind of part of what we wanted to talk to you about is given your experience and the kind of the breadth of things that you've seen through that experience it lends itself to what we're trying to do, and how can we glean from that experience the things that you feel are imperative given the state of the market and what you do.
Yeah. And I'll try to draw the best parallels possible between
how does that translate, right?
Yeah, right.
So go ahead. So that's my
that's awesome.
little spiel. So where did you grow up?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I'm here in Redondo Beach currently. I was actually born in Inglewood at Sentinella Hospital right off of Prairie and in between Century and Manchester there.
Close
And
by.
so lived around that area for a while until, 7 or 8. You had the riots, the 92 ones that started everything kind of get going in the neighborhood, took an unfortunate turn. And so we left. My parents actually moved me to Redondo Beach, say I was 8 years old. And then we ended up living there they lived there for a while, and I ended up going to school. But as a youth athlete, very fortunate to be a part of athletics as a kid. And again, I credit my parents for always making sure that while they didn't necessarily push me to do anything, they made sure I had the drive and conviction and understanding of what it takes to, compete and be in something like that. So I was a baseball player as a kid, and again, fortunate to do a lot of things because of it. Number one, played for Team USA, the Junior Pan Olympic tournament or Pan American tournament, which was just an incredible experience going to Ecuador, representing your country.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was, you guys have seen these athletes go on and represent countries in various ways, and especially when you're younger, it leaves a lasting impression on you. There's absolutely no doubt. I was able to parlay that into an athletic scholarship to play baseball at the University of Oklahoma. And while you would say, quite a change from going to Southern California to Norman, Oklahoma, they recruited a lot out of California, as a lot of those schools do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there were like 11 or 12 of us that were from California that ended up on that team. So it still felt somewhat like home in the locker room, but
absolutely
had an incredible 2 years there. It was unfortunate. There was some situations that the transfer opportunity. A lot of us that year actually transferred. I was playing every day, hitting fourth in the lineup, having fun. But there were certain things that we just kind of needed to move on from. And so I ended up at the University of Hawaii. And again, another stark contrast.
There's a change.
another stark contrast from Norman to Honolulu. But I had some family around there, and I had some friends already out there, so it made the transition in quite easy. We had an incredible program when I was there. I want to say both programs were pretty equal. So I got into coaching like the both of you. I was a second assistant at the University of Hawaii, and I just realized at that point I didn't necessarily want to go down that path. I think there's a couple things. I think one, I realized very quickly you can't coach your peers. And that's one of the most impossible things to do, going from playing with a group of folks to then
Mhm.
trying to coach them the next year. You know, it's very hard to garner that level of respect and understanding,
Mhm.
regardless
Mhm.
of who you are and how you are.
Mhm.
And then I just think, at that time, I really wanted to do something different. Both my parents were in sales. Neither of them at the time had even really gone to much college. They just went and got after it. Both were highly, ranked and up there from the, in the sales department, from like, director and owning own companies and doing all these things. And so I just decided I kind of wanted to find something different, and I wanted to drive myself in a different direction. So I ended up in minor league baseball working for the Frisco Rough Riders. Kind of funny story. It's like a 9-hour interview process. I had no idea what I was interviewing for. I'd never done an interview before. I just went in and they'd have you go tour the ballpark with an account executive and then go wait in the lobby and then meet with a manager, go wait in the lobby and then sit in a firing squad at the conference table and then sit in the lobby. So it was just this constant off and on. And they went to offer me a job that evening. We went to the game and I said, yeah, I'd love to. What am I doing? I mean, I legitimately had no idea what I was interviewing for. I thought it was like an internship. Turned out
Right.
to be a full-time sales position. So, I really enjoyed that. But that springboarded my career in sports entertainment. I was fortunate enough to then go right from there and be the youngest salesperson hired on the new Cowboys project when they were building that, starting back in 2007.
Mhm.
Wow.
So I joined the Cowboys in 2007. From there, there was a company created with the partnership of the Cowboys, the Yankees, and some other folks at the time, called Legends.
Right.
And, at the Cowboys, we were having levels of success that were far and beyond anybody's ever seen in sports entertainment, and from a revenue perspective. And that being said, there was a thought to create a global sales company from
Mhm.
that. Keep in mind, this was during the 08, 09 economic downturn.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
So we were doing some crazy things during that time. And so that's how my kind of, I would say, my sales and marketing consultative, career started, was really from that. And I guess if you count that, I've been a sales and marketing consultant for 18 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh, and really focused in sports entertainment. And more so, what I've been involved in is new builds, renovations, in the NFL, in NHL, NBA, arena business, and so forth, MLS. And I've had the fortune of kind of getting my hands dirty, getting on the ground, trying to find a need, sit with architects, help with the design, do market studies, and then help really execute a plan, build and execute a plan long term to get that, revenue to a certain point, but also set up the organization for long term. And so obviously starting at the Cowboys, but went and did Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. And then I decided to go back home right across the street from Sentinella Hospital and open up SoFi Stadium. So that was the most recent project that I was on, and I did that
Wow.
for 9 years.
And now, because I do have this background, you started after the Cowboys. You signed with Legends, and
Yeah,
then
so
did you?
So the Legends Global Sales arm wasn't really created until that point, and then the
Okay.
Niners were probably our biggest first client, and so
Mhm.
I went over there with them.
And then it was a. Did you leave to go to the Niners, or
It
was
was
that
just one of
part?
those where the consultative piece somewhat dissolved, and there was no
Mhm.
need for it, and I was just waiting for the next kind of thing I wanted to do. So I went to the Niners for, I think it was like a 9-month period, just to kind of
Mhm.
keep on there and keep
Sure.
going, and
Sure.
then continued back from a Legends perspective with SoFi Stadium.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I read where you have a partnership with Monumental.
Yeah, so currently, a couple things that I've been working on. One was NYCFC. Their new stadium is going up in Queens, right across the street from Citi Field. So incredible project for the MLS. It's going to be the number one stadium in the MLS today. There's no doubt. Number two, we are working directly with Monumental on their transformation project. They're doing $1 billion transformation.
Right.
I mean, essentially, think of it as they're building a new arena in an old scope in the old area, right? And
That's
so
it, then that's the Capital One or no?
that's Capital One Arena right
Right.
downtown.
Right.
Yep.
right?
Yeah. So I mean, that's going to be the number one arena in sports entertainment, I think, when it opens up. And then, there's a number of NFL projects that we're also working on. None I can actually mention publicly, unfortunately.
Sure.
But I'm sure as you look at, a bunch of stadiums that were either new or renovated from like 96 to 2003, the life cycle of the stadium is about 25 to 30 years as
Hmm.
is. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of organizations right now looking at new and renovation opportunities for their stadium. So
This is
I would know a lot in
fascinating.
that one.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And
Do
I, and
you?
I would say, just Alan, just for the sake of this and tying this back to somewhat relative opportunity. I mean, yes, I've worked more with product, but we've also had to tie a lot of athletic opportunity with product, whether it be youth
Mhm.
opportunity,
Mhm.
whether it be the professional athletes as in themselves. Like we've been having to do a lot of that from the sales and marketing perspective. And so
Sure.
I think that's where a lot of the, potential, long-term kind of play with this can be is how are
Mhm.
we thinking through the lens of youth sports and entertainment to then grow the professional sports entertainment and track and field.
Interesting, fascinating stuff. And well, yeah. All right. So we'll move on. Now, you've already described a portion of your work. Once you guys have, like, say you finish the physical plant of Capital One, if I'm understanding you, your job at that point is what?
Yeah, so it takes, we get to the point where we're helping with design, we're helping with kind of setting it up for success, doing market studies, getting it to point, that's point A. And then when you want to move to the next point, now it's what we call foundational phase. So it's getting everything ready, whether you're working with the marketing resources, data and technology, hiring, getting the right people on the ground to actually do the work, making sure that you have all your sales plans locked in, ready to go, making sure you have your timeline set, making sure you have your pricing set. I
Mhm.
mean, it's basically you take about a year, let's say 6 months to a little over a year, depending on the size of the project, to set it up for success prior to going on sale.
Mhm.
You design a preview center or sales center, if you will, and you want to, be able to walk people through. So really, my job is to go through that first, 18 months or so, get it set up for success, and then be there as a consultative advisor if needed.
Mm, interesting. And in doing that, how big is your team? Obviously it's a with Capital One, it's a combination of both entities, but
Yep.
and then Monumental as well. But how big is your particular team? And
Alan, I'll just tell you this, it varies project to project. There are
yeah,
some projects like SoFi Stadium where we put, 100 plus people on the ground because it was
right.
necessary. Monumental has a lot. I mean, their organization is impressive to a
Hmm.
point where I don't think we needed to add all of those bodies. They've already got a lot of qualified people in the helm. So we only added a handful. I want to say there's like 8 there now.
Hmm.
NYCFC has 12. So it all just depends on the size, the scope, and then what is needed and where the
Hmm.
gaps are in certain organizations.
Right, right. All right, cool, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so the next question I have, Troy, you can ask away. You have the same list. How, in regard to event management and execution, how has the industry changed since you first came in?
It's good. It's interesting you say that. I think the industry as a whole, specifically in sports, entertainment, I'll add in as well, but I'm saying specifically in live sporting events. The industry as a whole relied, excuse me, a lot on people coming to them. There was this, let's call it 70s to, mid 2000s. There was this mantra of, well, we're the big bad entity, right? Everyone wants to spend their discretionary income to come to a stadium, be live, watch their team and or their people compete.
Mm,
And no matter what we do, we don't even need to worry about it. So let's just sit back, open our doors, and collect the money. And,
right.
and that was very rampant. Um, I think what we saw was as teams started, and let me explain the reason why too is because your overhead, your costs weren't running as high in those
Hmm.
situations because you didn't have to be proactive and
Hmm.
go find people or be in the market. Now, obviously, the way technology's changed, not only over the last 20 years, but over even just the last five,
Hmm.
obviously there's a lot of competition now for a discretionary dollar than
Right,
there was back then. Not
right.
only just in sports, I'm talking across the board.
Sure.
And so what we have seen is that the level of effort, the level of intuitiveness and innovation,
Hmm.
and the level of understanding of how to reach a fan has drastically changed over the last 10 years.
It-
And even more so over the last five, and it keeps developing. And it's in that timeline to develop it and innovate is getting, smaller and smaller, that window. And so, you're really having to, again, be innovative, find smarter, more efficient ways to reach people, and put resource and capital behind the effort. Because again, if you don't put that behind the effort's not going to mean anything to anyone.
right.
Nobody's going to be on the hook for it, right? And so it'll fall flat. And I think that's, there's a lot of nuances to how that's changed, but I think that's number one, front and center.
Mm.
Well, it seems to me a lot of that too, making sure that you're getting to all your markets. Like if you look at right now, I'm waiting. It's already started. Like women's flag football is exploding in this country.
Absolutely.
I mean, high school started 2 years ago. I remember thinking this is kind of a joke. And it was not because wasn't being done seriously or well. It was just it's like the groundswell is like, okay, well, let's get this going. And like I think maybe nobody really knew, or maybe it was just great, a great idea. But I mean, women want to play football. There's
Yeah.
a lot of women football fans now. It didn't used to be like that. My mom, after all these years of watching the Niners, with me, she's still not really sure what's going on in football just because she's a mom. She's like, she
Sure.
the Niners, she's got her shirt and everything, but she doesn't understand third down or fourth down still, and it's like, okay, she's in that other demographic. Now you've got a bunch of daughters and sisters that have been raised by dads and brothers that are football, and they grew up watching football and they understand football and they'd like to play football, so it's
No
like,
doubt.
and this is just booming. I'm watching this coming up for this next Olympics, and I'm just going, this is going to be, kind of wild. So now you've got women
Yep.
that are watching more and more. They're going to come to games, and that whole thing, and like you said, you want to get younger, right, and not older. You want to keep getting, new,
No doubt.
younger, hipper fans because the old guys like us are dying off every year. You got to replace them.
Well, if you look at the initiative specifically, if we're talking women's football, if you're looking at the initiatives by the NFL, it really started down in like the early 2000s, or maybe,
Right.
2005 or so, when they started, I mean, aggressively putting resource and capital behind the youth movement.
Yeah.
And it takes a ton of focus, dedication, and patience
Hmm.
if you're going to start young and work your way up.
Right.
And yes, I agree with you, Troy, that I think it became a little bit more of a mainstream open world rather than just the hardcore man plays football.
Right.
But I would say I credit the NFL in putting a lot of effort into this a while back and seeing it pay dividends, but then continuing to focus on it and not giving up.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing the fruits of that labor. I think two, there's not really a sport like football. You can say, lacrosse is fairly close. Maybe there's a couple others, but there are just some unbelievable female athletes that may not be able to translate to some of these other sports.
Right.
But football or flag football specifically, I mean, their skill set is just perfect for, getting the most out of their athleticism.
Hmm.
And that's what makes me excited about the potential of not only that, but other sports that can continue to rise because of that, and finding, those aspects of athleticism that correlate to the specific sport. But flag
Right.
football definitely being one of them, I agree with you. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, interesting. Um, so if you were to try to capture in a nutshell what the current market, how would you describe the current market for what you guys do?
Yeah, and I guess in terms of the current market, more within the expertise of like track and field, or are you more referring to the current market in terms of how fans are viewing sports entertainment?
How fans are viewing sports.
Uh, yeah, I'd say you have to make more of an effort with fans nowadays to make them understand the value proposition of attending a sporting event.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I'm the biggest Dodgers fan I think there might be in the country, probably the world. And a lot of my friends and family and colleagues wouldn't argue that.
Mhm.
But that being said, I'm not sitting at Chavez Ravine every day. And why is that? I think we all know the us that are, around LA, we know the reasons. It can be, difficult to get there once you're there. Difficult to navigate, difficult, you're not all that comfortable sitting. But what are you missing if you're not there? You're missing the fan engagement. You're missing the experience. You're missing a lot of things that really draw you in and excite you about being around, 50,000 of your closest friends in an environment where you're all pushing for the same outcome.
Yeah.
However, it does make it difficult. Whereas when I was a kid, I mean, we'd be at Dodger Stadium 15 to 20 times a year if we could. I mean, if we could find a bleacher ticket and get out there,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
dad would take me, my uncle would take me, my mom would take me. We would go all the time because consuming the product live was way better than consuming the product on TV. But now you have these things, and now you have
Yeah.
every other way. I mean, you get, I don't know if you all are familiar with Cosm.
Hmm.
Cosm is an interactive media company. It opened up in Inglewood on the Hollywood Park campus next to SoFi Stadium, and they have another one in Dallas, and they're opening more. But essentially, it's an immersive way to experience live sports entertainment. It's like taking the Sphere concept, but making it better and making it more centralized on fast-moving, sports and athletics, so you can follow it and you can be in the action. It feels like you're sitting in a seat at the stadium with a crowd around you and up above you. I mean, everything that feels like you're sitting there, but you're sitting in a wide padded chair, you're getting served, you're eating great food, and you're buying a
Wow.
ticket just like you would to go to a stadium.
Yeah.
But you're with, 1,500 people instead of 50,000.
Interesting.
So that experience get better. So, like I said, you're not only competing with TV now, you're
Right.
competing with a lot of different mediums to consume the sport or the entertainment. And so I think that's where the biggest thing is now is how are we as sports sales and marketing, consultants, how are we explaining to an organization how to help them market and find the right value proposition for the fan?
Hmm.
And I will tell you, every market, stadium, arena, whatever the case may be, is different.
Hmm.
There's just no doubt. You really have to understand your market. LA is different than Buffalo, which is another project we've worked on for the last few years now. And how you approach the fan, how you make a value proposition for the fan is completely different. Then not only are you trying to find the general one, guys, now I have to find yours, Alan. Sure, I have to find yours. You guys are going to be different why you go to certain things.
Right.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time, but I'm telling you, once you
Right.
get to a room and there's a purchase to be made, you're gonna have different reasons why or why not
Mm.
you want to
Sure.
make that purchase. And so that's where our minds go, is not only generally what we need to do, but individually now, how deep do you need to dive in to make sure that you're presenting that opportunity to that one person?
But with that, okay, so with that approach, that's a pretty broad spectrum of sales mechanics, I would think. And so are you looking for commonality as well? Things that are going to be personal, but personal to each person.
Sure, there's always what I would call the best practice roadmap.
Yeah.
Right, Alan? And I would say that, I use it as kind of like Waze nowadays, right? Point A to point B. And like I know if I'm going to Dodger Stadium, I know my preferred general route, and I know I can take that route. But I can go to hit Waze to Dodger Stadium, and it can take me 100 different ways, but it'll end up getting me to that destination regardless.
Mhm.
Right.
So that's how I kind of treat it is you have your best practices, you have your principles, you have your understandings that we teach and we train on. But at the same time, depending on the individual, you may make a left turn when you didn't think about it, and then you better be able to get back on course.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's really the principles behind how we train and how we make sure that we're staying not only with the individual, but staying within the scope of what we're trying to teach.
And so if you were to try to capture maybe three or four things, what are the must-dos for Legends to be successful in that environment?
Yeah, and I would say, not only just Legends, right? And while, incredible company, I would just say in general for an organization here to be successful in that environment, I think number one is, don't be afraid to take risks.
Mm.
I think from any organization, that's the first thing. It is not easy to swallow some of the numbers that you'll see and some of the things that you need to do to be successful at a high level.
Mhm.
So you can't be afraid to take risk. I think that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you need to be flexible and adaptable at all times.
Mhm.
And going back to that ways, not only when you're having a sales conversation, but just in general, you may create a plan,
Mhm.
and it may take you 4 months to create said plan.
Mhm.
Something can happen, and you need to flip, and you need to
Right.
make it happen right away.
Right.
And especially when you're dealing with the environment I'm in, there's exploding timelines. So that leads to number three, which is urgency. One of the things I joke about with people is on these projects, if you're working on one project for 3 years, that's each year is about 8 years of organizational experience.
Mhm.
And anybody that works on these things will tell you that it goes really fast and there's a lot of urgency. You have an exploding deadline in a sense, right? You
Mhm.
have from when you conceive it to when you open it to do it
Sure.
right the first time.
Right.
And that's a lot of pressure. But urgency is a huge piece of it. And then I think the last piece of this, if I'm giving advice to an organization in this situation, I would say be genuine to who you are and what you do. Don't try and fit a square peg in a round hole, right? And
Mhm.
everything you're doing, really gut check yourself, and not from
Mhm.
the standpoint of, oh, maybe this is good because this person says it is, or this article said it was good. But you can gut check yourself. I mean, if you're genuine throughout the process to who you are and your convictions,
Mhm.
a lot of times what'll happen is you'll make mistakes, but you won't make bad or wrong decisions.
Mhm.
So those are the main things I usually focus on.
Cool. And I got a bunch of other questions, but speaking of this, um, it just dawned on me. Are you guys working with LA 28?
We do have some folks working in different capacities at LA 28.
Okay, cool.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's again, you're talking about a multifaceted operation there that
yeah,
just takes so many people and so much concentration and coordination. But yeah, there are consultants working on that currently in different areas.
yeah,
And yeah, it's no joke. It's a feat. We've been working on the Olympics now. I want to say for already 4 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that.
I think we actually started in 20, yeah, just after COVID. I think we really got
Right.
started.
The bid was won in 19, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so it really picked up after COVID.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
interesting.
pretty crazy.
Yeah. Now, going back to this, meeting the individual where they are, and trying to identify that need or that want. When I was kind of going through in my mind questions to ask, how have you guys adopted AI, and how has that fit into? Because that certainly gives a much faster, more efficient means of doing what you just said.
Absolutely. I think we're still, all of us are still in the early stages of understanding and maybe not necessarily utilizing
Yeah,
AI to its fullest capability.
yeah,
And I think not only are we as on the user end, but I even think on the creative end, people creating these opportunities, I
sure.
think still are scratching the surface on what it can actually do and what it can create. The way I have looked at it to date, and my mind could change tomorrow based on someone I talk to or something I see, but the way I see it to date is I think AI makes systems, ideation and creation, and back end processes more efficient right now for us.
Hmm. Hmm.
We can set up certain sales and marketing initiatives. We can think of, instead of racking our brains and trying to think of, something to do from, promoting something, we can pull what's around the web in 2 seconds and do that. We can do contractual back and forth with AI.
Right.
We've been working on that. So instead of having to go back and forth with a human to redline a contract, you can use AI to get best practices, get it all out there, and
Mm.
hopefully make it a smoother transition. There's a lot of things that we can do with it. However, I would say right now, as it stands today, you can use AI to create a customer journey. There's no doubt. And I think it works to an extent. But I still don't believe to this day where you can use AI to generate a sale or create face-to-face revenue or replicate
Right.
face-to-face
Right.
revenue. And
Right.
yes, we have. So I'll give you an example. We are looking at a software. I've actually been piloting it with chat AI chat software, right?
Hmm.
And AI chat software, you think, okay, well, you get a call, Troy, from somebody from, an organization in Los Angeles, sports organization A. Let's just say the LA Galaxy. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
And you get a call, and this person, you answer the phone, and it's Kelly from this from LA Galaxy, and you say something, she says something back, and it's not robotic, it's smooth, the conversation's good, you're understanding some stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that could work, but what does it work for? Because I don't think that phone call is going to be intuitive enough to get you to a point where you say, I want to buy something.
Right.
So, so the way we're looking at it today is we're looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, what if I'm able to have Kelly call you, Troy, and then Kelly gets you interested enough to want to set an appointment to come out and talk to us. I just don't think you can replicate that face-to-face interaction.
Right.
And as it pertains not only a sale, but gaining business. You guys know what can be done on a golf course. I mean, you know more about a person in 18 holes than you
Oh,
can
yeah.
knowing them for
Yeah.
18 years sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
My favorite way to do business. Yeah.
there's no doubt. I don't think that'll ever be able to be replicated. At least in my lifetime. That's what I think.
But it seems I will tell you, just with my little exposure to it and kind of grasping. My brother's actually just retiring. He's a senior engineer at Oracle, and we've had these conversations. The culling through big data is where it's at for AI, at least
No
now.
doubt. No doubt.
So it's very, and you're right. It's funny. It's almost. I remember back when PCs were first hitting the marketplace, and everybody's trepidation of actually hitting a keyboard and afraid the thing would blow up on them, or they would delete whatever they were working on. There was a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear, and what can I do? What can't I do? And it feels the same with AI. Of it's so new, and we're barely scratching the surface, so we don't really realize what are the permutations and depths that we can go in using this utility, because that's what it is.
No
It's
doubt.
a utility, as long as it doesn't take over the world, and
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
that's very cool. And now another question I have. How do you see changes for your industry on the horizon? And what would you use the example of, what was it, the is a cost that where you go in and buy a seat and you see the whole.
Yeah. Like Cosmos is. I mean, look, I think the use of technology is and the growth of technology continues to amaze me every single day.
Yeah.
I don't think that the industry can keep up fast enough
Mm,
for how technology is not only growing but being utilized. I mean, there's technologies that were created 10 years ago that are just being utilized today,
right. Right.
at a high level.
Mm,
And with like something like Cosm, I mean, I don't think anyone thought that that could ever be created, but it was the IP, the actual IP in the background was created 10, I want to say it was 10 years ago or 9
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
But now it was just a matter of like getting deals with leagues and teams, getting cameras into stadiums, getting this, like they had to do all of that work for years and then test and test and test to get it to the point where it works as it works today.
mm,
But then they're already somewhat behind stuff that's been created already. And
right.
so I look, technology is always going to play an immense opportunity. I would also say that I think what we're seeing the change in from a sports patron visiting an event is not only how they want to consume the entertainment, consume the game, consume the event, if you will, but how they want to feel at the event. I think a lot of fans and folks attending these events want to make sure they have the most comfort for their discretionary spend on said event.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And gone, I think, are the days where you could have 40,000 people have the same experience. I think there needs to be ways to continue to bifurcate experiences based on levels, like, call it a product tier.
Mm-hmm.
One of the recent presentations we did, funny enough, had 41.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was because, we used to think of it as 4 or 5. Now we have 41 because of the fact that each person now understands the maximization of their dollar at these events.
Right.
And if I'm going to pay you $100 for an event, you may not think that's a lot of money as the organization, but I sure as hell do.
Mm-hmm.
And I want my $100 to treat me well. I don't want to just have $100 to sit in a shitty seat, eat a cold hot dog, and drink a warm beer. I don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were okay with that for such a long time. And so it's staying ahead of that and making sure that each person, each patron maximizes the value of their dollar.
Cool. That's interesting. And again, that goes back to what you were saying before when you first started in the industry, where there it was more of a pull, more of a I guess the expectation that people will come to the stadium or come to the
Correct.
venue or whatever.
Correct.
Now they didn't have to worry about that stuff. As
They,
if I'm understanding you, and
you
now
know what
it's
I mean? There were a lot of organizations that did not have sales teams for the longest time,
yeah,
especially
and
especially in the NFL.
it's interesting.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they got, I mean, you're on the hook, right? If you're going to drive there and, you're talking about a rabid fan base a lot of times too. I mean, if you can pack
No.
a stadium in January in Buffalo, you've got, in a lot of ways, you don't have to get them in there. They're already going to go. It's like
Why
it's
why pay why pay to
only game
push
in
it when you
town.
don't have the
Yeah.
overhead? So
Yeah.
that was my point earlier is where it's risk tolerance and I think I'll give, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, a ton of credit on risk tolerance. You know that you could have built whatever you wanted and to a certain extent people would show up. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but he was really the first to say, I'm going to buck the system
Yeah.
and do things differently and ended up raising $600 million in seat licenses. That's above and beyond the ticket.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He built 380 suites. People are like, what are you doing 380?
Yeah, that's interesting because he was what was he the first to initiate seat licenses?
Not the first. They had a few programs before. The Panthers had one, and a few others had one. And there were bonds before back in the day,
Right,
the
right, right,
stadium
right,
had
right,
bonds, and
right.
so there was always some form or fashion. But he was definitely the first to accentuate the threshold. I mean,
Wow.
he went 4.5, 5x what anyone had ever done.
Right, right.
And people looked at him and said he was crazy, said there's no way. But
Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, he's now paved the way for all of these opportunities for these organizations.
Interesting.
And he took on a ton of risk to do so. And that goes
Yeah.
back to one of my points was that organizations, if they want to really maximize their opportunity, they need to take on risk. But there are some teams and some organizations that are just risk averse, and that's okay. But I think back in the day, they were very risk averse, and all they had to do was hire a small, ticket operations staff. People would come in or call in or whatever the case may be, and
Mm-hmm.
boom, there you go. They would have their tickets sold. And so
Mm-hmm.
why would they go from, $50 a ticket to $150 a ticket and hire a bunch of people to, push on that sale when they're already getting the money and they're good
Right.
at it, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
which it brings me to one of my last questions is with in the current environment with so many entities, teams, organizations, venues, whatever, competing for the same dollar. How does an organization or industry differentiate itself
Yeah.
um, enough to win that dollar?
It's a really good question. And, I think it depends on if you're looking at it within sport, I'll start there. Actually, let me start just generally.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the market.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is I think Los Angeles, New York, um,
Glutted markets. There's
yeah,
so much
maybe,
entertainment, so much sports. Yeah. Lots
yeah,
to choose
and
from.
I think those are probably the biggest two. There are others, obviously. Like I think Seattle's actually a tougher market. I'll give San Francisco some of that too.
Chicago.
Um, but
Yeah.
but these markets are not only fighting for the sports affinity and dollar. I mean, they're fighting. Here you're fighting weekend vacations because there's a lot of weekend vacations in California, right?
Yep.
And you're fighting brunch in the beach on Sunday versus the NFL football.
Right.
You're fighting, entertainment on going to a concert on a Tuesday in
Yeah.
Hollywood
Right.
versus going to a basketball game. So I think generally in a market like LA, that's more prevalent. Yes, there are others. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm just talking about Los Angeles here. Denver's got it,
Right.
Phoenix has got it. Like I get it. But that being said, I think that's the general thought process is some of these other markets are really fighting for, the outside dollar. When
Right.
you think about sports specific, it's interesting because I think there's tiers, right? And I hate to say this, but it's just the way I've seen the world is NFL's tier one. If there's an NFL team in your market, for most markets, it's the tier one. Not a lot of competition for a sports dollar, for a sports fan dollar. I mean, they're the behemoth, right? When you go down, you've got NBA, and NHL, depending on market. I think one is better than the other. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Capital One Arena, Allen. I would say that the Capitals are the long-standing traditional pull and the Wizards are up and down
Right.
based on
Right.
how they're performing. When you go into a market like Phoenix, which had the Coyotes at the time, I mean, the Suns would now draw the Coyotes tenfold. And so it really just depends. But I'd say really if your NBA, NHL, MLB can get close. Challenge with MLB is it's just a lot. It's a lot of games, a lot of home games,
Right.
long seasons. MLS has been doing really well as well. I think they've been competing with MLB and working their way through, depending on market, of course. And then you kind of have what I would call, the ancillary sports. There are some up and comers. There are some things that are drawing a lot of attention. I think obviously you have UFC, but I think that's more specialty. As you see, UFC in and of itself does well. The branch offs that are smaller tend to struggle, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of that going on. But when they're competing within a market, let's just say use LA internally from a sports entertainment perspective, you're competing for entertainment.
Hmm.
And here's what I'm going to tell you: what you're competing for is the undecided fan.
Right.
You're not
Yes.
competing for a fan.
The ones
If
you
you
already
have
have.
a fan,
Right.
yeah, you have a fan. So you're not trying to overly market to the fan. What you're going to market to the fan is merchandise. You're going to market, player appearances, or you're
Hmm.
gonna market the stuff that the fans want. But
Hmm.
if you want to drive business, you market to the undecided fan.
Right. Right.
And that's what these folks have to do. And so when I was in Frisco Rough Riders, it's a great lesson I'll never forget. What did we do differently? And how could we compete with the Rangers, the Stars, the Mavs, the Cowboys? Well, we didn't compete with their fans, first of all, because their fans are their fans, and
Right.
they want to come out. We didn't really compete in sport. We made ourselves the entertainment venue for families.
Mm.
Forget what's going on the field. Forget the actual sport of baseball, whether fortunate or unfortunate, because you had your diehard baseball fans that would come out. But let's take away the sport of baseball and let's actually do this. And I'll give you an example. I mean, you guys have all seen the Savannah Bananas, breakdown. I'll tell you what, when that first came out, I'm going to be honest with you. When I watched that, I was like, they're making a mockery of baseball. This is absolutely ridiculous. What the hell are they doing? Over time, I'm realizing, like, my gosh, they're not taking baseball fans. They're taking the really big driving entertainment fans and the families, and they're
Hmm.
turning this into a family event.
Right.
It's a sports circus, if you will. And I don't want to use that term to discredit what they're doing. I'm using that term from the standpoint of if you were, back in the day, you take your kids to the circus because it was the cool, entertaining thing that came into town.
Right.
This to me is like the sports circus,
Hmm.
and it's done at an extremely high level.
Hmm.
And so like that's what I mean by just trying to find the undecided fan and bring entertainment into their lives because I don't think teams now are going to be able that are in the middle rung just roll out their schedules and roll out their player promos
And expect.
and
Right.
expect fans. It's
Right.
not going to happen.
All right. Let me give you two examples. And I don't know what the current situation is, but for a period of time, NASCAR was the fastest growing spectator sport in America. How did they, from your perspective, how did they employ what you're talking about in order to grow a fan base that wasn't, their primary fan base out of the Southeast?
It's a great point. They nationalized and they sensationalized the drivers in all reality.
Okay.
And frankly, what they did was they utilized the assets they had best. They
Right.
utilized the drivers, and frankly, it worked well. I would say that people were drawn into the storylines, not sitting at a NASCAR event.
Right.
People were drawn into the storylines. People were excited to see who was going up against who. And I'm not saying they turned it into a WWE situation, but they used the feuds and they used the drivers' personalities. And when before the only people that knew who the hell these drivers were folks that were really predicated in certain areas
Right.
that focused on it. And so they did a really good job. Now the PGA is trying to also do a similar thing with
Right.
on Netflix and all of that, but I don't know if the personalities resonate as much as the drivers' personalities that do in NASCAR. And I don't know what that is, why that is, how that is.
Mhm.
But I've been reading and understanding some things about the drive and what the ROI is of said show, and it's not having the same effect as like a NASCAR or the F1 series has had.
Right.
Sometimes you don't have those personalities necessarily to drive, and you got to think of other ways. to grow it. But NASCAR did a really good job accentuating their drivers.
And well, I had another example. Oh, why? Yeah, I mean, you brought up lacrosse. Why has lacrosse not seen that kind of transition?
So again, these are all my opinions, just to be clear, right?
Well, they're
And there's
opinions out of a lot of experience.
exactly, yeah. Well, I just want to make sure we're all aware. Nothing I'm saying is any real like over
We'll, we'll,
fact.
we'll have you sign a disclaimer at the end.
But that being said, I mean, look, I think lacrosse, it's I think it's similar to NASCAR, and again, totally different sport, totally different deal. But I think they were focused in specific regions and areas for such a long time.
Yeah.
I think lacrosse has started the youth movement over the last, call it 7 to 10 years,
Hmm.
or nationally.
Hmm.
I think it still has a ways to go before it actually becomes a sport that's adopted by a lot of folks outside of the areas that they're currently in.
Northeast, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing it more and more,
Yes.
and it's happening more and more.
Hmm.
But the youth programs in different areas need to become more prevalent for
Hmm.
that to take hold. Also, you look at the first real you like I mean when I say real I mean marketed pushed it's the lacrosse Premier League, I think, right? Is that what it's
Right.
called?
Yeah.
One in the yeah, the US, and like that just started. I was actually, funny enough, I was with the founders when they rang the bell on NASDAQ. We were right there standing with them
Oh,
in
wow.
New York City
Wow.
when they launched the league. And I think that was, whatever it was, 2 years ago or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. About 2 years.
But yeah, but they're just getting started. Think of what MLS was when it first started and where it
Right.
is, different world, right? And so I think it's just going to take time and dedication, and then I think they're going to need to grow it in areas where it's not prevalent today.
Do you think when you talk about differentiation, differentiating competitive advantage, identifying what it is that is going to be of interest to the undecided, do you think that those kinds of principles transcend every sport? That it's the equation is the same. The variables within that equation may be different.
Yeah, I would say the harder part, and with the thing that would take a heck of a lot longer, would be to introduce a sport that is not known within a commonality of a group. And so I have seen some pretty interesting European and Asian sports
Mm.
that if you brought it in here and just said, okay, we're going to put a lot of resource behind it, it's going to take a long time for someone to really understand. Just
Mm.
as bringing the NFL into other markets
Mm.
can be really
Right.
difficult. And yeah, the NFL is the big bad NFL, and we get all that, and they get hundreds of millions of viewers for Super Bowl
Right.
across the world.
Right.
But you try to do the NFL, in India or China or Australia, where they're, I mean, Australia's rugby, but where they're
We're
really
playing
pushing
cricket.
these
Right.
initiatives,
Right.
or
Right.
Brazil, where they're pushing
Yeah.
these initiatives. It's really difficult to introduce a new sport into a place that has never had it, and then
Yeah.
explaining the sport, then growing it. That's a very difficult thing to do. So I think that's one thing that I would say would be really hard to transcend. The other thing I would say too is, what defines a sport, Alan? And to me, there's got to be a level of achievement, athleticism, excitement, in something that really drives said sport to excite people.
Right.
And yes, there are always going to be, sports that have a cult following and people love and do all that. But if you're talking about trying to bring principles of major sport into another event or opportunity, like, you got to make sure there's something there to work with.
Right.
And, I look at what your guys' expertise is with track and field. I mean, there's so many opportunities, I think, to grow not only just what's happening with, I mean, sprinting's the main thing, as we all know, but there are just some incredibly freakish athletes here.
Right.
And it's entertaining as all heck to watch it. The means to watch it is it's hard to find.
Right.
Well, it's
So,
not hard to find. It's almost impossible.
fair.
I was given this example the other day. I forget it was a baseball game. UCLA was playing last week in the World Series,
Yep.
and I was looking for the game. So I go to my ESPN app and I'm looking through and I find MLB. I'm like, okay, that's wrong. I keep looking, where's college baseball? I can't find it. So then I go other NC2A sports. So I look through that and it took me two or three different things just to find college baseball. I finally found it. And what I realized along that journey was that I never found track and field either. So I was looking for
It's
that. I'm like,
yeah.
there is no
Yeah.
track and field, on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sports app.
Troy.
It's like,
It's funny you say that, man. And look, I'll just give a little bit of background if we can shift gears here to track and field a little bit. I'll shameless plug for my daughter, Kenzie Kish.
right.
Not only is an incredible human, super smart, caring, loving, just
You,
an
you,
awesome kid.
you said she's adopted, did you?
For that side of it, yeah, that's the wife side of it. But she's also an incredible athlete. And so she had the opportunity, came from soccer. We were a soccer family growing up, and in terms of what she really enjoyed and gravitated to, but she was always really powerful, strong, and fast. And she had went through her first year of high school. She played club. They won the national championship her eighth grade year. Tremendous accomplishment, achievement. She played, every minute. And she just kind of started falling out of love with it.
Mm.
When she got to high school, I think that just kind of continued to go downhill, and she decided to get into track and field. And so she came out at Redondo Union and just did a random tryout when they were practicing. And, coach saw the power and the explosiveness and said, okay, let's get you going. I'll give her credit. I mean, she really worked her butt off over that February to call it when was the
The short
conference
season, yeah, May.
championships? Yeah,
What,
May.
what, wait, how old is she?
So she just had her freshman year. And shout out to her. She did win the Frosh Soft Conference champion at the 100 and 200.
Nice.
So she was the champion there. She ran a 12.7 in the 100 and a 26.4
Nice.
in the 200. And that's getting it down from, I think she was at one point a 13.4, 13.5 down
Right.
to 7 and a 20. I think she had a 27.8 to a 26.4. So I'm giving her a lot of credit for the work she's putting in. And I think she's really starting to connect with it on an athletic level. And so as it pertains to track and field, I'm very new to this whole thing, uh,
Mhm.
but I am absolutely bought in because my child is. And so I would say this, I'm saying that to also say this. A lot of sports, again, that's what takes time, patience, dedication. But when the kids get into it, and Troy, you made this point, people are going to eventually get to a point where they just don't care about sports entertainment anymore, whether it's age or whatever the case may be. Different generations rise up, different
Sure.
generations take over. And I believe MLS was a big, big piece of that,
Yeah.
huge piece of that,
Mhm.
of the youth movement. So we saw a lot of soccer, we saw a push there. And so I couldn't tell you if there was track and field, youth track and field. I'll be honest, like I had
Yeah.
no idea that there was, and it's not as prevalent. But I can tell you there's 20,000 soccer clubs in
Yeah.
Right.
the States.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's where I'm going with this is, I think her getting into it now has me into it, and I have a lot of observations, and I've noticed a lot of things that go on in these, it's high school meets, but that go on in these meets. And to your point, Troy, you said it beautifully. Finding it on TV is impossible. I mean, the only reason I found the SEC championships was because I found it through ESPN Plus. And
Mhm.
Right.
I was looking for, I think, college baseball at the time. No joke. I was looking for college baseball,
Same as
and I
me.
saw
Yeah.
SEC champion track and field. So I called Kenzie in to watch it. She was all excited to watch the 200. And so, but again, it's, I think starting at that, I would never have clicked on that if my daughter wasn't involved in
Right. 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 Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
There. I mean, we're not going to be able to get into a whole lot with track and field, from that standpoint. But that's a topic for another conversation. The projects that we're working on. It, when I got back into this over the last 4 or 5 years, when my kids were starting to grow up, and I didn't have to worry so much about the finances that aren't available in track and field. Um, the conclusion of that kind of research, or trying to gather what the state of the sport is currently, resulted in coming up with this concept or not, I should say, culminating in the understanding that contrary to what I thought was going on, there's a great need for standardizing specifically technique methods, and that's been reaffirmed over the last 3 or 4 years by countless coaches, athletes, take your pick. When at the beginning of that process, I thought, no, everything has evolved. The technology's improved, the availability of information, everybody's gained their knowledge base, and so therefore everything has improved. Well, no, that's not the case at all. So, and I'm bringing that up because that has grown, that idea of saying, okay, let's address let's address and see if there's a need for teaching these rudimentary, these what a friend of mine at San Diego State says, the deal breakers that have to be done if you're going to have success long term. The things that elements, it's like in your case playing baseball, there's certain must-dos to be a good hitter, and there's certain things you cannot. If you don't do them, you're going to be spotty at best. Yep. Same thing in fielding, same thing in pitching, so on and so forth. Well, that kind of standardization that exists in baseball for the most part does not exist in track and field, surprisingly. So what started as this, okay, maybe should we address this, and is there a way to do that? And we had a pilot program that we did. It was an invitational clinic, and we were debating on whether to get elite athletes or collegiate athletes or high school athletes. And we ended up with not the top tier of high school athletes, and there's a reason behind that. Did an invitational clinic, brought them in, we had 18 kids, we were shooting for 20, we got 18 and 10, Troy, about 10 coaches, 12 coaches?
Yeah, 10 or 12.
Yeah, we brought them into a classroom setting and discussed applied physics and stuff like that, and then we took them out in the field. Well, that resulted in kind of a post-mortem that started to speak to, okay, there's more to what we're talking about in addressing some of the needs of track and field than just the technique. And it started bleeding into a conversation that I've had many times over the years, but I had last year with Casey Wasserman from LA 28. Yep. And he and I had this conversation probably 2 or 3 times. I've known him for a long time. Yep. And the conclusion is always the same, and he kind of captured the essence. He said track and field has to be reimagined.
Yep, no doubt.
So that's brought us to kind of rethinking this whole thing, and we do have a project that is in its formative stages. It's too early to really talk with any substance because it hasn't gained any. It doesn't have enough traction yet. But the idea of which is to address the things that you brought up today, to start to look at track and field from your perspective. Yep. And identify these things that have to happen if you're going to bring it out of the dark ages of Chariots of Fire and actually introduce it to a undecided viewing public.
Yeah, and I would just say this, Allan, to your point, it made me think of this part that I probably didn't. I mean, I've hit on it, I think, in general with all the points, but I think it's being looked at athletically, and it needs to be looked at as a business. And I know people don't want to hear that, and I understand people don't want to hear that. But to get it commercialized and get it to a point where it's recognized, it needs to become a business.
Well, and there's a part of this. I don't know. Your familiarity with track and field is limited, but when I use that, Troy knows exactly what I'm talking about. When I use the word picture of Chariots of Fire, there's no exaggeration there.
Yep. There's
a mentality within track and field that it's that you ought to come to track and field because it's track and field. What is wrong with you? Okay, well, sorry.
But I think, Allan, even when you do go, even when you do show up, okay, like let's just say you should go because you should go. Okay, I'll go. Fine, I'll be there. I have a choice. Troy and I talked about this, and I think it's a valid point. I think you can't watch track and field when you go to track and field. There are specific events that are highlighted to watch, that are narrated, that are there. Mm-hmm. I was at a national, the Arcadian track meet, national meet. There's, don't
The,
bunch of
the invitational, yeah.
Yeah.
invitational. Yeah, I mean, incredible place, and what a great. I had no idea what was going on until sprinting started.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
There were kids breaking records in
Hmm.
high jump, long jump, triple jump, and there was no mention of anything. You
Hmm.
didn't know. And then I think at one point, like in between runs, someone said something about something that happened 2 hours ago.
Sure.
I wanted to see that, and I wanted to highlight that. And so that's just one example where I was really disappointed going to this thing where I couldn't view something a feat of just unimaginable opportunity. Like, I mean, this kid was incredible, and I couldn't see it because I wasn't standing on the bleachers over a blocked out fence. There were like 10 people that could actually view it.
Right.
That
Right.
that that one moment blew my mind, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
that's, from the
Uh,
standpoint of exposing events within track and field, that's been the bane of coverage as long as
forever.
I've,
Yeah, forever. I
um,
mean, ever since my senior year at UCLA, they started showing track meets on Prime Ticket. They did the same thing, and they still do it now. It was they told us that it was our home meet against Cal. It was in the rain. They come down here, and the cameras were set up that week. We could see where they were, and they go, "Yeah, we're going to film you guys meet. We're going to show it tonight." And so we womped on them. We did our deal.
yeah.
We swept the high jump. Me and Powell and Brian Mergenthal, which was an upset, was great. And we were waiting with bated breath, like, yeah, we're gonna be on TV. And they showed every running race. They didn't even put up graphics for who came in first, second, or third in most of the field events. They might have shown a one shot put or one disc or one long jump or whatever. I don't even really remember because when they weren't showing the high jump, I started to get upset. And then they showed every lap of the men's 10,000. And that yet to change. 32 laps, 32. And, these guys are doing the commentary, like you're saying, like, how are we going to keep this interesting to the people at home? So he's like, so Bob, I heard your daughter is learning how to play the clarinet.
Yeah, right.
How's that going? Because we're
Yeah.
just watching them run around in circles forever, and
Yep.
it's like the problem that we're having is, like you said, yeah, look at the leagues that aren't afraid to take risks. Who's changing the rules almost every year? The NFL. The
Yep.
NFL has a product that they know that you want to watch, but they're still trying to make it better.
Oh yeah, they're
You
they're they're
know,
not satisfied with being tier one. They
yeah,
want they
yeah,
want to wipe out everybody else.
exactly. And you look at basketball, you came over a 3-point shot, yeah, now they're talking about changing that. But baseball, they innovated inside the shifts and everything. But the biggest thing that they've mandated, which was brilliant, was the pitch clock.
Right.
Let's move this along. I was
Yeah.
watching tennis a couple weeks ago, and 5.5 hours for the men's
Oh,
final.
I watched that
I'm
match
sorry,
too.
I can't watch that long. I
No,
I like tennis,
I
you know,
left. I came back and it was still on. I'm like,
right?
damn, I guess I'll watch it.
Right. But I mean, realistically, first of all, like you're talking about your markets and your people that are interested in everything is like, hey, how about paying attention to the American attention span? I mean,
No.
we got a lot of people that have grown up on their cell phones and everything else, and they've got the attention span of gerbils. So it's like, let's clean this up. Let's, make it simpler. And the other thing that it seems to me is the saturation thing. Like you guys know the owner of the Mavericks, for a long time was talking about how he thought there's too many NBA games on. And the season's too.
Right.
Same thing with
Too long.
baseball.
It is right.
Football, why is football king? Because every game, for the most part, is
Matters.
important.
Right.
Pretty
Matters. Yep.
important. If you're
You're
bought
right.
in, you're bought in,
Right.
and you're going to pay attention to all those because
And we use
no
that in
matter
the
who makes the
NFL. And
playoff.
we use that in the NFL, the sales process too, Troy. Just so you know,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because
Yeah, it's a great
thing
point.
to use,
Yeah.
and we push the organizations to use is just you're not playing said, and I won't use a team because I don't want to offend anybody. You're
Right.
not playing said team on a Tuesday night.
Right.
A bottom dweller on a Tuesday night or a
Yeah.
bottom draw. So,
Right.
no,
And if you lose, you got another game on Thursday. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. The NFL's got a lot of things going for it that way, in that, load management and stuff, if you're smart, it still exists, but it's only within the week.
Right.
What do you do on Monday after a game Sunday? They're not practicing. They're hobbling around, getting ice baths, they're getting massages, they're doing walkthroughs. Yeah, they're probably watching film of the other team. So they're not going to just sit around, but they're not pushing the envelope. They're trying to cover. So you got a lot of pieces there, but I think the importance, making everything, like you said, important. And then the other thing is, how about being polished in your broadcast? Having You watch those NFL trucks, like we know, they've got cameras everywhere. And there's that guy, or maybe probably two guys by now, sitting there going, hey, go camera seven, watch this. Okay, we're going to cut to that. And they've had a long time to refine this. And, who would benefit by that the most would be track and field. Because we've got something going on, like Greg's saying, I've got the long jump over here. I got the high jump over here. I got the pole vault over there. I got all these things going on. It's a three-ring circus. And there's no way you can watch it all at the same time. But with the wonderful cameras and everything else, you kind of could if you wanted to. You could literally go, okay, we got a few seconds to kill here. Let's go back and show you what just happened. We had a great battle going over here with the world leader and the number two fighting it out in the long jump, and they're trading back and forth, and we weren't able to bring it before because we were watching the 100, but now that we're putting the hurdles back up or we're doing whatever, we're going to show you that,
Yeah, it's one of the things, Greg, that you said. I mean, we were talking about this in respect to the things that separate legends, or the things that you would have to do, or you have to do, meaning in your industry, and it's obviously the same for in almost any sales environment, is figuring out how do you attract that undecided, that track and field has these purists, is the term that I use when I'm talking to the people.
You're a fan.
Yeah, you have these purists they're diehard track and field people, and they always will be. I don't need to worry about them. I need to worry about the other 90% that never even heard of, they don't know what a hammer throw is. They don't know what a shot is. But and some of what you said here, and part of the reason why I was very interested to talk to you is to see whether or not my thinking and our thinking as a group is are we on the right track? And you've confirmed a lot of this. It would be great down the road a little bit if we're able to establish a little traction to revisit this and then actually off book and talk about what we're doing and then pull you into it from the standpoint of your expertise and your experience, to be able to say, okay, here's where the holes are. Here's what you got to look at. Here's what you got to get rid of. You talked about one of the key factors in today's market is the willingness to shift gears quickly, to not be so set in your ways that you forego an opportunity that's sitting right in front of you, for ego or for whatever reason. Things like that.
Or it's just been done that way.
Right. It's always been done that way,
Exactly.
which is where we are with track and field. But
Exactly.
I would love to do that. When you have, going back to this conversation I had with Casey, I said, I have an idea, and I really, it's still so, it's still very formative right now. I mean, I have it outlined and all that stuff, but I asked him, and that conversation was in part dedicated to saying, okay, if a concept is brought to you that it's outlined, it's well defined, it's thoughtful with some of the things that we talked about today, would you take a look at it and look at the efficacy of it? And he said, you get it. I'll look at and put up my team on it, and we'll figure out whether it has any teeth.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. He's great. I'm glad that I'm sure I was like,
but the same thing is true. It's like you said earlier. This is a group effort. This is a big uphill climb for track and field, and it's going to take a monumental amount of people and a lot of brains working on this,
and a lot of resources,
and a lot of resources. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's when Troy started talking about you and said, hey, I met this guy at the banquet, and I didn't know your background until I started looking into it, and I said, okay, well, wait a second, this guy's been down the road on from ground up, has seen transitions, has seen market development for both sports and venues or whatever. And, who better to begin to evaluate what we're talking about doing and being able to speak intelligently and constructively and critically than somebody like this. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to help wherever. So I'd love to, help drive an initiative that can, like I said, it's nothing that's going to happen overnight, but it can be the start of something,
Sure.
that can really help grow. And I've got, I mean, Troy and I were trading thoughts and ideas over a couple Coronas, and I think there's an opportunity there as long as the backing is good. And I'll give you an example. Uh, Alexis Ohanian, who certainly has resource, started last year or 2 years ago, started an event called Athlos,
Hmm.
and it was an all-female running event. And his goal was to highlight, sprinting, female sprinting in track and field. And I think he was very well intentioned. I went to the event because I was already in New York, and a good friend of mine ran it. And I think they did a good job. The thought process was, let's bring these sprinters in, let's create an event, but let's have a big concert after that everyone can stay for. So you're essentially selling concert tickets,
Hmm.
Right.
watching sprinting.
A sideshow.
Yeah, and I'm still, I think the jury's still out the longevity of that approach. I'm not saying it doesn't work because I thought it was an awesome event, but still don't know if that improves or enhances the growth and longevity
Hmm.
of the opportunity, or if it's just the one-off hit,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Well,
Yeah.
that brings up another problem because I think track and field does one of the poorest jobs of promoting its own stars out there. Nobody
I
knows.
couldn't tell you anyone outside of a couple sprinters.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
should know more than most, and I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
You ask me who the top
Actually,
three sprinters are. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty typical.
yeah.
Yeah.
And anybody that falls into that demographic of the undecided, forget it.
Right.
Forget it.
You could say, as a matter of fact, I have done this. I've done this with, of course, the kids are, vacuous anyway, but, you know, uh, you ever see Carl Lewis jump? Who's that?
Yeah,
Right.
well, yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sorry. Have you at least heard of Jesse Owens? How about
Yeah,
that?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
too
like
old. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. But like you hit that, and those are two people that had some of the most national attention. But what was it around? It was around the Olympics.
Olympics.
How do we get away from the Olympics? It
Right.
can't be the Olympics. The
Right.
Olympics is so fleeting. No
Yes.
You got
one's ever gonna remember.
1 week and 4 years, and that's
No
it.
one's gonna
Yep.
remember that. And the lead up to the Olympics, I get it. They actually do a pretty decent job in
Right.
the United States with the lead up. I'll give you that. But again, it doesn't have
Yeah.
longevity attached to it. You can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've come up with two things. We've come up with um, the nucleus of the rebranding, and I think we've come up with at least the concept of how to take that nucleus and apply it, because it speaks to that 3.5 year period of time. It's basically disregarding track and field in its purest form and saying, okay, we need to think in a totally different way.
Yep.
So yeah, so it's going to be, like you said, hopefully if it has some gravitas and can move the ball a little bit, that's great. And if somebody else picks it up down the road, that's fantastic.
Well,
And keeps it going.
I think Greg had some real insights there too with the thing about kind of rebranding inside with like who are we trying to attract? Like
Yeah,
you
without
got to
question.
remember the fans are the ones that are there anyway. They're the ones that even though you put on a crappy telecast and
No, they'll always be
they're
there.
poorly organized and everything else, they're going to show up because they love it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about them. You
Nope.
get to bring in the other people and you're competing, especially here in LA, for their entertainment dollar, just like you
Right.
said. And so how do we get them? We do the marketing thing, like you said, where we say, hey, well, let's get the families back in, because if there's one thing that you're going to have, you have Greg Kish watching his daughter for the first time running track and field this year.
Yep.
And he's a fan because she's a fan, so
Right.
you do
Right.
that. And I
Right.
think that
There's
was a
no
really
doubt.
good point. We got to take all those things into account and
Well,
come up with
that's
a
what.
master package.
Right. Well, you and I have talked about this, and I've talked to the other coaches about this. That it we'll never have to worry about that 10% that are purists. They'll
Right.
always be there. You know, the people that live in Eugene, Oregon, those types of people that
Right.
have been, have been immersed in track and field and live and die with it. Well, okay, that's great. That's not where my interest is. My interest is, and furthermore, the sport's not going to grow if that's the focus. The sport has to grow by paying attention to the other 90% and figuring out those competitive advantages and how do you package that in such a way that you start to attract, whether it's, like Greg was saying, focusing as an example on families. Okay, yeah, that's a good thing. And
Smart.
what about new people? What about new people to track and field whose daughters or sons are now in it? Okay, that's good too. The broader scale is how do you make a splash and begin to take advantage of something that has been always the thought within the purist community, but has never been exploited.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are. That's what the concept is built around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay. So the next step is golf. All of us.
Right.
Oh yeah. Wait. That was the last. Shoot. Ask that question, Troy. Will you?
Oh wait, was it? Is that the
last of the bonus question?
Oh yeah. Is Legends handling the Ryder Cup this year?
No. We'll have some folks out there, but we don't do anything with the Legends doing the Ryder Cup.
Can you try?
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll be entertaining. I mean, if you're about to open a major stadium or have a big renovation or
Right.
need a bid on food on a massive food and beverage opportunity, I got you.
Right. Well, as far as getting the input goes, I think the next step is definitely us spending those 5 hours around on a golf course and
Would love that.
having a better year there.
Do you play, Greg? You should be good. You're a baseball player.
So I'll say this. I've been known to be a lot of fun on the golf course. I don't take it seriously. I tried at one point and I got to a point where I was decent. The problem is I just don't play enough. And I rolled out a couple weeks ago. I shot an 83. I mean, it was decent and not a good round. But I could roll out and shoot a 95 just as easily. So I don't care anymore. I like having fun. To me, like I've now looked as I've gotten older, I look at golf as the opportunity to spend quality time with friends.
Yeah, that you like.
Or have acquaintances become friends.
Yeah.
Those are my two instances of golf. And I always do a lot better when I'm playing with someone who has a similar mindset. Like I'm not, if you want to gamble or do anything like that, like let's make it light and fun and be like, hey, let's play for the round after the 18, the round after the round, the 19th hole, and that's the kind of golf I enjoy playing. I'm not gonna sit there and play and I played in a couple of those like games and tournaments and stuff, and it's too intense. It's not. It makes it not fun.
Right.
I've got a little anecdote for you, Greg. You'll love. I went to school at Syracuse and I played about a half a minute of football.
That's a Legends property.
Say again.
That's a Legends property. Syracuse. We do work out there.
Yeah, and played lacrosse.
Oh, nice.
And when I got out, one of my teammates, a few years after I left, I talked to him. I said, we got to figure out a way to keep in touch and keep our group. The group was a very, very tight group and some of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life. So we put together a golf and fish annual trip to Thousand Islands up in the St. Lawrence River.
Nice.
And speaking of golf, and these are, as you have experience with your baseball friends and anybody in athletics, everybody is highly competitive.
No doubt.
So we had teams. We paired up in teams, and the guy that was hosting his family has a cabin he calls it a cabin house on one of the islands in Thousand Islands, and so we're playing, and his playing partner, Billy's sitting over a 3.5 foot putt to win and
Mm.
we were playing. I think we were playing skins or whatever it was. It was
Yeah.
it was low key, but
Yeah.
it was still,
Look
you know,
bad.
still bragging rights. And Billy's standing over a 3.5 foot putt to win the round, and his partner says $20. He misses it.
Of course. Of
Straight
course.
out of
Hedging his own
Caddyshack.
bet.
Hey, Schmale, $1,000 says you missed that putt.
Yeah, right.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Uh,
That's so cool.
Well, gentlemen, this is
yep,
fun. Appreciate the time with you guys.
absolutely. Appreciate you,
And
Greg.
yeah, happy to, as you guys develop some more of that thought, happy to dive in with you, take a look at it, because I think, again, it's one of those things where I think there's a real opportunity with the sport in and of itself. And as we talked about earlier, based on the level of athleticism displayed.
Yes,
And
Right.
and when you find the right type of athlete for the right type of competition, and you see that on display, it's awe-inspiring. And I do want more people to want to be a part of that. So I'm excited for what's to come.
fair enough.
Yeah, good. And would it be possible, in the next few weeks to get a sit down off camera?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Love it.
Cool,
We'll
cool.
put that
Well,
together.
great to meet you. Oh, I didn't ask. You have how many kids?
Just the one.
Hang on one second.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah,
Are you done?
a couple minutes.
I'd like to talk to you.
All right.
Hurry it up.
All right. Sorry, Greg. I have 3 kids, and one of them is calling my name.
No, all good. No, I only have one daughter. That's it. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
have I met her, Troy, yet, or no?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Papa's coming.
Okay. All right.
All right, guys.
All good. I
All right.
appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Hey,
Great to meet
thanks,
you.
Greg.
Bye.
Troy, thank you.
Hey, you got it, man. I'll do a little closing up and
All right.
good luck.
I'll talk to you in a few.
Okay, deal.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right, and we lost Greg Kish. He was with us for over an hour there. We went in about an hour and 20. So I think we delved in and around the idea of as much as we love track and field, how come the average sports fan here in the United States, and this we didn't even touch globally because the sport has started to lose some of its luster over in Europe as well. And I have seen some more interest in some of the third world countries per se, say smaller areas that don't have as many sports like we have here in the United States. India, real popular. I see a lot of content coming out of there on my Instagram and stuff. But for the most part, track and field is on a decline, and we'd like to change that with some new ideas. Basically, the old paradigm is not working, and I think the one thing we have going for us is we have some really smart people who can learn from the successes of these other leagues. What would we learn from the NFL? What we learn about the NBA? And I think in the NFL, I think people are more team oriented. If you grew up watching a certain team, unless they really shaft you somehow, you're gonna be like, hey, I'm a Niner fan for life. I was born in the Bay Area and I grew up watching 49er football, and I'm pretty much a Niner fan. No matter who's on the team. Whereas I think basketball has some of that, and then basketball is a lot of times more about the stars. When these guys bounce from one team to the other. If you're a LeBron James fan, then you became a Heat fan, and then you became a Cavalier fan again, and now you're a Laker fan, and that I think they're more star oriented. So you could come up with there's so many things to learn, how you market your stars. The length of the season we're talking about here as far as the success of the sport, but nobody's worried really about basketball and baseball and hockey losing their places here, the way it's going. Yeah, like Allan said, the NFL is top dog, and a close second really is the feeder system, which we call college football, right? But yeah, it needs reimagining, reworking, rethinking, repackaging, all of it. And but like Greg said, we have some of the most amazing athletes in the world, and unfortunately, we're not showcasing them very well. So it's going to take some major changes, and it might not happen in my lifetime, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So until next time, this is Troy Haynes signing off. Thanks again to my guests, Greg Kish and Allan Hanckel, and we will see you soon. I'm right now trying to close a couple deals. I'd like to get Case and O'Reilly back on here, but he was traveling last I saw him after coming in second at the NC2A finals. And Kyle Jenkins, who one of my former high school athletes who just finished up his collegiate career, had a big PR and jumped 223, I think, to actually beat his coach's old mark. He had been underneath that for a couple years and just had a big finish. So there's a couple more athletes out here, a couple giant shot putters that I've just met recently. One that I work with at Yorba Linda High School. Coach Carl, this guy's 6'10 and 320 pounds, and not an ounce of fat on him, and an amazing coach. So we have a lot of guests coming up here on Raise a Bar that we will be introducing you to. Again, hit the subscribe button there on the YouTube channel, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and some others, various platforms that have podcasts. And until next time, this is Troy Haynes signing off. Thanks for being with us.